We were briefly at ease. We're on record in House Bill 31. It is the second hearing. I've been misinformed. And we have before us the sponsor. I'm told that we are ready for public testimony. Is there anyone?
Mr. Chair,
yes.
I think the two members that are here in the Finance Committee today weren't here to hear the bill yesterday, so I think it'd be a good time just maybe take a brief at ease, let them take a quick look at the bill, and if they have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. And if not, then we can go right to public testimony. That would be my recommendation.
All right. Rather than taking that ease, I'll just ask the members, are there questions about House Bill 131 on daylight savings time?
Yeah, so maybe just a quick synopsis as to why we picked daylight savings time as opposed to standard time.
It's a good question. Through the chair, Representative Carpenter, when I decided to take on this particular issue, I went to my constituents in the communities that I represent, and the benefits, there's been quite a bit of discussion about both nationwide and within the state of Alaska as to if we were going to quit changing our clocks in the spring and in the fall, what would be the best way to do that. And from the community that I represent, they think it's really important, primarily for economic opportunities, taking advantage of tourism and things like that, that we have the longer daylight time in the evenings, which we do have now because we are on daylight savings time, and it would be a detriment to the economy and particularly to the tourism industry if we were to no longer have those longer evenings in the summertime. So to answer your question succinctly, it was purely based on the information that I've received from my constituents, which caused me to take up the issue. But I will not dispute the fact that some people may not agree. Some people might think that it'd be better to stay on standard time.
Follow-up?
Follow-up, please. Thank you.
Representative Carpenter.
Mr. Co-Chair Pro Tem?
Yeah, sure.
Any analysis on whether families would benefit from, especially school-age children and families with kids in school, would benefit from an earlier daylight in the morning time frame? Is that kind of what we're faced with? If there's more daylight in the early time, that's supporting families with getting kids off to school or whatnot, versus businesses that want to have more daylight in the evening time. Is that kind of the dilemma that we have?
Through the chair, Representative Carpenter, very good question. In terms of, again, I can speak from the regional area that I represent and say that as it currently exists during the wintertime when we are on standard time, students are already going to school in the dark. In other words, at least the schools that start around 8 a.m. Those that start at 9 a.m., it's kind of getting light at that point. What the move would be, if we were to adopt this particular bill, what would happen in the wintertime when kids are going to school in my region is that they would have that much longer darkness, but they generally already going to school in the dark. They'd have more darkness in the morning, and then they would likely be able to go home in the light, which during the shortest times of the year, they both go to school in the dark and they come home in the dark. And so that's just an anecdotal answer to your question, and I'm not aware of any particular studies about the benefits, safety benefits or anything like that of being able to go to school in the light in the morning. I'm not aware of anything like that. It might be out there, but I don't know about it.
We have a question from Representative Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair, is when does the tourism season really start in Southeast, or in Ketchikan, I guess, maybe specifically?
Through the chair, Representative Rasmussen, we have some significant activity beginning right around the 1st of May, and then it picks up by the time we're into June and through the middle of September. It's pretty heavy.
Follow-up?
Follow-up?
Thank you. And through the chair, we're in early May right now. It seems like we're maintaining daylight into the later evening, 8, 9. I guess I'm curious, just walking the boardwalk last night with cruise ships coming in and out, everything seemed to kind of start buttoning up around 7:30-ish. I don't know what the hours for cruise ships are in the Ketchikan area, but just given how much daylight we have by May 1-ish, I'm not sure that extending an hour is totally necessary for evening time, because we have the daylight for so long at that point. Anyways, it seems to already extend beyond when the tourist activity is high and businesses are seeing the commerce and everything from visitors.
Through the chair, Representative Rasmussen, very good point. However, if you extend into the summer, particularly in my community, when you get into late August and into early September, and remember that the tourism season lasts pretty solidly, it's even going later and later, but we're solid and heavy until around the 24th of September, something like that. Then you do see businesses being impacted in their ability to do flight seeing and their ability to offer other activities out on the ocean, kayaking, those kinds of things. Those start to get curtailed due to lightness, daylight hours, et cetera. And to answer your question about cruise ships, some cruise ships don't depart my community until 10 o'clock at night. And generally, the stores stay open until that time. And people generally like to walk around in the light more than they like to walk around in the darkness. But again, it's certainly a good question, and if we were to go to a standard time all year round versus a daylight savings time all year round, well, that would have to be a bill offered by somebody else, because the bill that I'm offering, I won't make any apologies for it, is in the best interest of my community that I represent.
Representative Ortiz, I'm sorry to have to ask something so elementary. Does your proposal mean that we will be 4 hours west of New York, or am I right about that? Would we still be 4 hours west of New York?
For part of the year, if the East Coast didn't adopt a year-round savings time, rather than us being a 5-hour difference for part of the year, for part of the year we'd be a 3-hour difference, and then part of the year we would be like we are now, a 4-hour difference.
All right, so part of the year we would be at Seattle time, unless Seattle.
That's correct. However, the bill does simplify that this change is not only going to require, if this bill were to be actually enacted, it would require several West Coast states to act in the same manner, and would also require the approval of the federal government for it to happen.
All right, seeing no other questions, I'm going to go ahead and begin public testimony. I see a Mr. J.P. of San Francisco would like to speak to us, and I invite him to do that for 2 to 3 minutes at his discretion.
Yes, hello. Thank you for having me here. My name is JP, and I'm the president of the nonprofit Save Center Time, and I just want to make sure you can hear me properly, yes?
Beautifully.
Okay, wonderful. Again, thank you for this opportunity to speak, and I'm the president of the nonprofit Save Center Time. We would oppose this bill for permanent daylight time for several reasons. I wanted to point out that, firstly, federal law, the Uniform Time Act, specifically Title 15 of the U.S. Code, Section 260, Paragraph A, forbids permanent daylight time. This could not be implemented without change to federal law. Alternatively, permanent standard time is pre-approved by federal law. There would be no need for an act of Congress to permit you to opt out of clock changes, and that is how Arizona and Hawaii and all 5 U.S. territories avoid the biannual clock change. Secondly, I wanted to note that there have been many studies about this, and the vast majority of them, the scientific consensus is that permanent daylight time is not good for our health, our safety, and especially our children's education. Russia, for example, tried permanent daylight time, and they found that it severely increased mental illness and mood disorders, depression, as well as car accidents. Other countries have tried it. It's even been tried in the U.S., and it does not usually go well. In essence, you would be forcing people to wake up an hour early every day from November through into March. And if you were to ask them explicitly if they would like to do that, I probably would guess they would say no. But that's what happens when we turn the clock forward an hour. We are forcing ourselves to wake earlier in the dark. Finally, I wanted to note there were talks about sunrise changes and sunset changes. In Anchorage, for example, your latest sunrises right now are about 10 o'clock in the morning. That would be 11 o'clock in the morning with this bill. Your latest sunsets right now are in Anchorage almost to midnight, and so that would be sunsets instead around 10:30. So I don't think standard time would be a problem for business, but it would definitely be a problem for the health and safety of your community. Thank you again for this opportunity, and I'm really glad to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Are there questions for Mr. P? Seeing and hearing none, we'll now move. Thank you, Mr. P. We'll move to Dr. Binder of California. Is he there?
Yes, I am.
Dr. Binder, give us your name and your testimony, please.
My name is Dr. Andrew Binder. I am a sleep specialist. I am in Southern California, and I'm testifying to the health issues related to permanent daylight savings time.
Okay, please proceed.
Yes, well, Mr. P summarized a lot of the from the public standpoint, and I just will say that day in and day out I see patients, and there is universal agreement that everybody hates changing the clock back and forth, and which that creates a sleep disorder in 100% of the population. I would just say that when I poll my patients, they all hate daylight savings time. You know, especially for people who commute and work, getting up in the dark is difficult, and especially with children, they have no choice. Adults can change their recreational time, they can change their work schedule, but kids have no choice, and kids getting up in the dark is difficult. I understand in Alaska, with your short days during the winter, that's a problem anyway, but you definitely don't want them to stay in the dark because it throws off the circadian clock, and this is really a crime. Permanent daylight savings time is a crime against human physiology. The biggest problem with patients having insomnia, mood disorders, and so forth is exacerbated by people who have to get up in the dark during the week, and then they sleep late on weekends to make up for it. It leads to chronic sleep loss because our internal clock is set by sunlight, and otherwise you have to use artificial means to try to entrain the circadian rhythm. Anyway, I, as a kid, grew up where we had split schedules. I remember the effect, but in adolescence, it's positively dangerous. We know that adolescents are prone to circadian misalignment. That is, and they sleep late on weekends. They have to get up early, and ultimately it leads to sleep loss. There's a higher risk of suicide and mood disorders in adolescents because of the loss of sleep. So I'd say that the Arizona and Hawaii don't seem to have any problem with tourism, and I think that we really should be following the science And I doubt that there's a sleep specialist anywhere in this country that would defend permanent daylight savings time, whereas most of us, including the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, California Sleep Society, we actually think that permanent standard time is the best policy. And I also will be available for any questions.
All right. Any questions for Dr. Binder? Seeing and hearing none, Dr. Binder, thanks for your testimony. I can identify that no one else in the room would like to testify, so I'll close public testimony at 10:12. I will let the committee know. Yes.
Very quickly through the chair, I didn't get a chance with Mr. P when he was speaking, but if what he said is accurate, that our latest sunrise is at 10, which I feel like it might be late 9 or right before 10 a.m. in Anchorage, and this bill would move that to 11 a.m. My kindergarten son goes to recess for school at 10:45, so they would be going out to recess in the dark, and I don't know that I could get on board with that concept, so just wanted to put it on the record.
All right. Thank you. So what I'm going to do is, as I did with House Bill 5, so for both bills, calendar, I'm going to recess the meeting so the chairs can decide how to proceed. However, I'm confident the chairs would say your amendments should be prepared at moment's notice for introduction before the committee. We'll recess at 10:14.